Welcome to today's episode of How Women Inspire. Today we're talking about our Credo, this countercultural framework that we are inviting everyone who's part of our community, and hopefully everyone you talk to and everyone who hears this, to start to really espouse. It's made up of 4 different, really simple things we can all do that frankly is counter the negative cultural stuff that we've all grown up in. So today, this is we considered our second part of the Credo, which is to make introductions, to say yes to actively supporting other women. We've all heard it. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Deals get made on the golf course. Your network is your net worth. So I want you to think about, when you consider how deals are done and power is consolidated, what do you think about? Most of us think about men. Men have perfected this, and it's fantastic. They get together and they make deals on the golf course, and they actively move fast and support each other. Sometimes it doesn't end up being so great because people sort of do the groupthink thing. But in general, watching the power of men coming together and saying, I'll make this investment if you do, for example, is really extraordinarily valuable to make things happen. 85% of board seats are secured through word of mouth, through networks, not through search firms. And when you think about venture capital, how deal making happens, what happens is one VC basically calls up a couple others and says, I'll invest if you do. Let's get behind this. And if we as women want to have more power and influence, we have got to activate our networks together and for each other. So this is what I know. When I ask the women that I know, the women in my network, who makes the most connections and introductions for you, what the women tell me largely is men are making more introductions for them. And I think that's because our culture sets it up so that women actually are discouraged from doing so. So think about this. Do you remember that moment when you got your hand slapped for making an introduction? I do. Do you remember when somebody warned you to be careful about making introductions? I do. My natural inclination is actually to make connections so everybody wins. I really, truly believe it. And I've watched it over and over since I was a kid. But I know that I started filtering myself because of the culture. I was trying to fit in with what I felt like I was hearing was the cultural frame. Women, ladies, we need to do deal making. We need to network and make introductions. We need the women around us to get connected to be successful. That's how we're going to raise our own boats. So this is what I want you to deeply consider for you. What would you do if you knew you could get to the people who would say yes and make a difference for you? If you could get to that venture capitalist, if you could get to the nominations and governance chair of that board that you're interested in going on, if you could get to that CHRO or leader CEO in that company that you would like to join, what difference would that make for you? How much more would you progress? You know, it's so interesting. Throughout my life, I've been part of a lot of women's organizations, associations, networks of women. And more often than not, people say this is a pitch-free zone. And I always felt uncomfortable or shame, or sometimes even like, well, why am I here then? Because we have got to be connecting each other. We have got to start pitching all day long and make it the cultural norm for women. I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm not asking for a seat at the table. My friends, this is the first generation of us. We have a huge opportunity. We have power and influence and wealth. and we can start building the tables where we get the prime seats. Today, we want to invite you to join us as investors in venture. I know no one's asked you to do it before. It might be something that seems scary or foreign, but I promise you it's not that different than investing in a mutual fund where your retirement funds are. I want you to lean in and just learn a little bit more. How about making the commitment that in the next 12 months, you can give yourself 12 months to figure it out and to take a step. I want to invite you to be part of the new table of power and influence and wealth. You're invited. I want to sit at the table with you because we're going to make big change. We're going to make the world we've been dreaming of. I can tell you there are so many people who I can call on today because I helped them or someone that they know, and they know that I'm the real deal. So I want to share two quick stories with you of some things that I was able to make happen because I think about actively making connections all the time. I don't have a roadblock in my brain. My guess is some of you literally have a block up because you've gotten it trained out of you. So I went to a film festival. And when I was at the film festival, I saw this film called Time for Ilhan, about Ilhan Omar's journey in getting elected to office. And it was magnificent. And I went up to this filmmaker afterwards and I said, is there anything I can do to help you? What do you need? We were doing Q&A actually. And she answered and said, you know what? I need $100,000 so I can get this into all the schools because young women and kids need to know about this journey. And so it planted a seed. And a friend of mine had just said to me, she's very involved with politics. She said, I'm an executive producer on a film. So I called her up and you know what she did? She invested $100,000. This happened overnight. I made one phone call. Everybody won. That woman was thrilled to be the executive producer of that film. And the filmmaker was just over the moon because she wanted more than this to just be a film that people watched once. She wanted it to be in the schools. She wanted to get it out in the community. So that's a gigantic win. And that filmmaker, I can call on her anytime. She's always going to think about me because I solved that big problem for her. And the truth is it cost me nothing but just a little thoughtfulness and a phone call. All right, let me tell you one more example. We take trips of women on travel trips, and this for many years, Cuba was our focus. Cuba, because you have to unplug. It's like going back in time. It's such a culturally transformative experience that you kind of you plant new pathways in your brain. So we bring women on these trips, 20 women at a time, and we invite people to consider, one, is there a story about yourself that's holding you back? Can you leave it? Can you process it over dinner? Can you leave it behind in Cuba? Can you replace it with something else that's going to be great for you? We also ask people to consider sort of what's that next big thing for you? And is there anything holding you back? Well, Amy Allison was on a Cuba trip a couple of years ago with us. And during that trip, she kept saying, I've always been the number 2 person, but I know I want to lead something. I've been doing it for men all my life. I've been making them look great. And it's time for me to really get out there. And we processed through this idea she had originally had for a book called She the People. The idea of She the People was about engaging women of color at the centerpiece of our democracy, as to get them to, both parties, especially the Democratic Party, hadn't been investing in women of color at all when they were doing voter outreach. For some reason, we decided in our country to discount the power of the vote of women of color. Boy, was that a mistake. And Amy Allison knew it. And she was involved in all parts of it, whether it was the person who was the strategist, the political strategist that was a woman of color, or the networks of women who are chiming the bell and making sure that everybody goes out and votes. Amy knew that there was power in them. And so all of us processed with her, and she came out with this idea to start this movement. And I was so inspired by Amy. We all were in tears. And her whole thing is love and belonging and hope. And to me, that is just cornerstone. I love everything about that. She had me at those love and justice and belonging and hope. Those four words to me are just absolutely spectacular. So when we got back, a friend of mine had been sending me all these books about dark money and all this stuff that was quite depressing, frankly. And I thought, you know what? She's looking for a way to engage. And if I introduced her to Amy, maybe there's something there. And I introduced them over lunch. And this young woman said, I'm going to give you $50,000 to launch your vision for Amy. Everybody won in that engagement. Amy got to start something that changed our democracy. And this woman got to be involved in something groundbreaking that was important for her. Now, I'm giving you these examples. I can't do this every day, believe me. I happened to know something about what was going on for some people for whom, if I connected them, there could be a great win. And I want you to really think about paying attention when people tell you what they're interested in achieving or being involved in and their passions, and connect people. It is what we need, and it changes the world. So my friends, say yes to making introductions, say yes to helping other women, and actively go out of your way to make our culture better, where women get support. And pitch, 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 pitch. Every time I see you, that's what I want to see happening. Thanks, my friends.